What happens when a ruler's logic just completely breaks down? Well, we're going to find out. Today, we're diving into Andher Nagri, a classic 19th century Indian political satire that is just as sharp and relevant today as it was over 100 years ago. It's a wild ride and, honestly, a masterclass in the kind of chaos that erupts when reason gets thrown right out the window.
But before we get started, I want you to think about something. Just imagine a world where justice has absolutely zero connection to right or wrong, or guilt or innocence. What if your fate, your very life, was decided by something completely and totally random? Just hold on to that thought, because that's exactly the world we're about to step into.
So here's how our journey into this madness is going to unfold. First, we'll arrive in the city and meet its unique king. Then we'll check out its totally nonsensical economy, get dragged into a ridiculous court case, and witness a finale that is, I promise you, unbelievable. And then we'll wrap it all up by unpacking the powerful warning this story still holds for all of us. Okay, so our story begins in a kingdom that's literally named the City of Darkness. And listen, this isn't just some spooky, dramatic name. It perfectly describes a place where all logic, all reason, has just been snuffed out. In fact, the play's full title in Hindi is Andher Nagri Chapat Raja, and that translates to a city of darkness ruled by a foolish king. So yeah, the author pretty much gives the whole game away right in the title. The entire identity of this place is built on the staggering incompetence of its leader. And right into this chaos walk our two main characters. You have a wise guru who immediately senses that something is deeply, deeply wrong here. And then you have his disciple, who is so blinded by greed, all he sees is a land of opportunity. This clash right here, wisdom versus greed, is what really lights the fuse for the rest of the story. So you might be asking, what's the source of all this chaos? Well, it all flows from the top, from the man in charge, the foolish king. This one line, man, it captures the king's entire philosophy. For him, justice isn't about finding the truth. It's about putting on a show. A punishment has to happen, so literally any victim will do. It's a worldview that is as simple as it is terrifyingly dumb. This is a guy who's completely impulsive, making huge decisions on a whim. He's a sucker for flattery, which means his whole court is just filled with yes men. He's totally disconnected from the real world. And maybe the worst part of all, he actually believes his own terrible ideas are strokes of pure genius. It is the perfect recipe for a total disaster. So the first taste our travelers get of the king's brilliance is the kingdom's absolutely bizarre economic policy. In Andher Nagri, the whole concept of value is just gone. It doesn't exist. Whether you're buying a feast of rich, decadent sweets or a simple bundle of healthy vegetables, the price is always the same, 1 taka per ser, which is basically like saying everything costs a penny a pound. The wise guru sees this and is like, this is a massive red flag. This place is going to collapse. But his greedy disciple, he thinks he's just found paradise. And that brings us to the main event of the play, where this totally broken justice system is put on full, hilarious display in a case that, of all things, starts with the death of a thief. Okay, get this. A thief is in the middle of robbing a house, a wall falls on him, and he dies. Now, you'd think that's the end of the story, right? Nope. The thief's brother goes to the king and demands justice for his brother's death. In any sane kingdom, the case would be laughed out of court. But this is not a sane kingdom. And this is where the king's so-called logic really shines. He kicks off this absurd chain of blame. The king blames the homeowner blames the guy who built the wall. The builder blames the guy who made the mortar. The mortar maker blames the guy who carried the water for the mortar. And the water carrier, he blames a goat owner, claiming that a passing goat distracted him. I mean, with every single step, the excuse gets more ridiculous than the last. This insane search for a guilty party leads to a climax that is somehow both hilarious and horrifying, and it all revolves around a noose that just doesn't quite fit. So after that whole blame game, they finally settle on the goat owner. He's the guilty one. But there's a problem. The guy's too skinny, and his neck is too thin for the noose. So the king, in his infinite wisdom, just declares that the original crime is now totally irrelevant. The new crime? Having a neck that fits the noose. He literally orders his guards to go search the entire city for someone who's the right size for the execution. And who do you think they find? Of course, it's the guru's disciple.
Lured in by all that cheap food where everything costs a penny, he has eaten and eaten until he's grown fat. And now, his own greed has led him straight to the gallows, his neck being the perfect fit for the king's random, twisted justice.
Just when it seems like all hope is lost, the wise guru returns. He knows you can't reason with an idiot, so he appeals to the king's vanity and stupidity instead. He bursts in and declares that this is an incredibly special, auspicious day. He makes up a prophecy on the spot. The first person to be executed today will go straight to heaven and be reborn as a great king in their next life.
Well, the foolish king hears this, and his greed and his ego just take over. Why should someone else get to be reborn a great king? He wants that reward for himself. And so, in the ultimate act of pure foolishness, he pushes everyone else aside and orders his own execution. And just like that, the city is finally free of its foolish ruler, who becomes the last victim of his own ridiculous system. Now, it's a funny ending for sure, but underneath all that dark comedy is a very, very serious warning. And that's exactly why this play has stuck around for over a century. The play is really a blistering satire of problems that never seem to go away. It's mocking arbitrary leaders like the king, the yes man who enable them, and a justice system that cares more about finding a neck for the noose than it does about finding the truth. And, just as importantly, it's a warning about us, the public, and how easily people like the disciple can be lulled into complacency by their own ignorance and greed. So at the end of the day, Andher Nagri is so much more than just a funny story. It's a timeless allegory. It's a powerful warning about the decay that starts to rot a society the moment that reason is tossed aside and leaders are no longer held accountable for their actions. And that leaves us with one final, lingering question to think about. When you look at the world around you, where do you see the warning signs of an Andher Nagri? When you see value getting distorted, blame being shifted endlessly from one person to the next, and justice becoming more of a spectacle than a process, well, you just might be hearing the echoes of the City of Darkness.